My husband had been dead for 10 years. And for 10 years, I had been paying off a debt that never existed. $500 a month. $60,000 total. Every cent of it stolen by someone who kissed my cheek at Christmas. The woman who robbed me, she was family. She stood at my husband's casket and squeezed my hand while she was already planning how to bleed me dry. This is that story. Hey, welcome back. If this is your first time here, you just found the channel where real people tell real stories that will make your jaw hit the floor. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you are listening from right now. I want to see every city, every state, every country. Let me know how far this one travels. My name is Dorothy, I am 72 years old, and I live alone in a brick bungalow in Glenview, Illinois. My husband Walter died of a cardiac arrest in the fall of 2014, and the morning they put him in the ground, I thought the worst thing that could ever happen to me was already over. I was wrong. Walter handled every bill, every bank statement, every tax return in our marriage. I never questioned it. He was meticulous. He kept a leather binder in his desk drawer with tabs for insurance, mortgages, utilities, medical. After 46 years together, I trusted that man the way I trusted gravity. He was just always there holding everything in place. 3 days after the funeral, his cousin Phyllis Barton showed up at my kitchen door with a casserole dish and a stack of papers. Her eyes were swollen. She pulled a chair close to mine at the table and spread those documents out between us. Loan agreements, payment schedules, numbers with too many zeros. They looked official, printed on letterhead I did not examine closely enough. Dorothy, I did not want to bring this to you now, Phyllis said, pressing her palm flat against one of the pages. But Walter borrowed a significant amount from Heartland Community Bank before he passed. If you do not start making payments, they will put a lien on this house. My throat tightened. The kitchen still smelled like the cologne Walter had splashed on 4 days earlier, and now someone was telling me he had left me buried in debt. How much? I managed. Enough that it will take years, Phyllis said. But listen to me, I know people at that branch. If you send me $500 every month, I'll make sure the payments go through properly. I will handle everything. You will not lose this house. $500 on a widow's pension and Social Security, that was groceries and heating and half my medications. But I looked at those papers, looked at Phyllis with her red-rimmed eyes, and I nodded. What else could I do? She was family. She had driven Walter to his cardiologist appointments. She had brought soup when he was recovering from his first episode. You do not question people like that. Not when your whole world just collapsed. So I started sending the money. Every single month without fail. I walked into the Western Union office on Waukegan Road, filled out the transfer slip, and wired $500 to Phyllis Barton's account. The clerk behind the counter knew me by name after the first year. Every time I handed over that yellow receipt, my stomach clenched a little tighter, but I told myself it was temporary. I told myself we were making progress. I cut things out of my life one by one. The book club membership went first. Then the Saturday lunches with my friends group at the diner on Lehigh. Then meat 3 nights a week became meat once a week. I postponed a crown on my back molar for so long that the tooth cracked and had to be pulled. My granddaughter Chloe needed help with tuition at the University of Iowa, and I sat at my kitchen table staring at my checkbook, knowing I could not send her a dime because that $500 had to go to the bank. She took out loans instead. Every month, Phyllis texted me. Received, you are doing great, Dorothy. We are making real progress. And once, a message that made my chest ache with gratitude. Walter would be so proud of you. 10 years, 120 payments. $60,000 scraped together by a woman eating store-branded bread and skipping her blood pressure medication every other day to save $11 a month. I never questioned it. Not once. Phyllis was family. She had been at my wedding. She had held my hand in the hospital waiting room while Walter was dying. Why would I question family? Then last Tuesday happened. I was standing at the kitchen counter waiting for the coffee maker to finish its cycle. The mug I was holding was Walter's old Northwestern mug, the one with the chipped handle I could never bring myself to throw away. My phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number, I almost let it ring through. Every other unknown call lately was some recorded voice telling me my social security number had been compromised. But something made me pick up. Mrs. Calloway, a woman's voice, professional and measured. This is Jennifer Tanaka from Heartland Community Bank. I am calling regarding your late husband's account records. My fingers went white around the mug handle. Had I missed something? Had Phyllis forgotten to forward a payment? Yes. This is Dorothy Calloway, I said. Mrs. Calloway, I am reviewing our files, and I need to clarify a discrepancy. We have no record of any outstanding loans, lines of credit, or debts of any kind associated with your husband Walter Calloway's accounts. His estate was fully settled within 60 days of his passing in 2014. There is nothing owed to this institution. The coffee maker beeped. I did not move. That cannot be right, I whispered. I assure you it is, ma'am. His accounts were closed cleanly. His credit history with us was exemplary. Is there a specific concern that prompted your inquiry? My knees buckled. I grabbed the edge of the counter and lowered myself into the kitchen chair so hard the legs scraped against the tiles. The yellow Western Union receipts. The monthly texts. The stack of papers Phyllis had spread across this very table 10 years ago. Someone told me he owed money, I said. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone standing in another room. That is not reflected in any of our records, Mrs. Calloway. If someone has been collecting payments on a non-existent debt, I would strongly encourage you to contact law enforcement. I need to go, I said, and pressed the red button before she could respond. I sat in that kitchen chair for a long time. The coffee went cold in the pot. The clock above the stove ticked through the silence. My hands would not stop trembling. I pressed them flat against the table and stared at them, the veins, the age spots, the ring Walter had put on my finger in 1968. These hands had signed every one of those Western Union slips. $60,000, not to a bank, never to a bank, to Phyllis. I stood up and walked to the bedroom. My legs felt foreign beneath me, like they belonged to somebody else. I opened the bottom drawer of the dresser where I kept important documents. Inside were two things: a manila envelope stuffed with Western Union receipts arranged by year, each one paper-clipped to the month it represented, and a spiral notebook where I had taped printouts of every text message Phyllis had ever sent me, because I did not trust myself to keep track of things on my phone and wanted a paper backup. I carried both to the dining table and spread them out. 120 receipts fanned across the woods like a timeline of my own stupidity. I put on my reading glasses and picked up the pocket calculator Walter used to keep in his desk drawer. My fingers moved across the buttons even though I already knew the answer. 500 times 120. The display showed 60,000. I set the calculator down and pressed my knuckles against my mouth. That money could have kept Chloe out of debt. It could have replaced the furnace that groaned every winter. It could have been the trip to Italy that Walter and I had circled in brochures for 30 years and never taken. Instead, every dollar had gone into the hands of a woman who looked me in the eye at Thanksgiving and said she was glad she could help. Something shifted inside me then. The trembling stopped, my jaw tightened until my back teeth ached. I was not going to sit here and cry. I had raised 3 children. I had worked 20 years as an office administrator at a middle school. I had buried a husband and kept a house standing on my own for a decade. I was not helpless, and I was done being treated like I was. I pulled out my laptop, the one my son Nathan had given me to Christmases ago because he worried about me being isolated. My fingers moved slowly across the keyboard. I searched my email for anything from Heartland Community Bank. There it was, buried in my inbox from November 2014. A message confirming that Walter Calloway's estate had been settled in full, no outstanding obligations, accounts closed. I had received this email, I must have read it. But then Phyllis had come to me with those papers and her tears, and I had believed her instead because she was sitting in my kitchen and the email was just words on a screen. My phone buzzed. I looked down. A text from Phyllis. Hi Dorothy. Just checking in. Have not seen this month's payment come through yet. Everything okay? My pulse hammered in my throat. The nerves, the absolute nerves of this woman, texting me like a bill collector while sitting on a decade of stolen money. Every instinct told me to call her right now, to scream into the phone until my voice gave out. But something held me back. Maybe it was all those years of watching courtroom dramas with Walter on Sunday nights, or maybe it was the office administrator in me who knew you never confronted someone until you had your paperwork in order. If I tipped her off now, she would have time to prepare a story, move money, destroy whatever those fake documents were. I picked up the phone and typed carefully. Sorry, Phyllis. Had some trouble with the transfer, we'll send it tomorrow. Her reply came in for seconds. No worries at all, these things happen. Take your time, sweetheart. Sweetheart, my stomach lurched. I set the phone face down on the table and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the rose garden Walter had planted along the back fence was pushing out its first spring buds. Red ones, the climbing variety he had trained along the wooden trellis himself. He would be livid if he knew. He would want justice, and he was going to get it. I went back to the dining table and opened a blank document on my laptop. At the top, I typed one word: evidence. Bank confirms zero debt. 120 payments at $500 to Phyllis Barton equals $60,000. All Western Union receipts preserved. All text messages printed and dated. Original documents Phyllis showed me in 2014, location unknown, never retained copies. That last line gnawed at me. I had handed those papers back to her without making a single copy. Grieving, trusting, and foolish. I would not make that mistake again. I picked up my phone and called Nathan in Denver. He was a database engineer, the kind of person who believed every problem had a solution if you organized the variables correctly. He picked up on the second ring. Mom, everything all right? Nathan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to stay calm, I said. That is not a sentence that makes anyone calm. What is going on? If a person has been collecting money from someone based on a lie for a very long time, and the person paying has receipts and messages proving it, what do you call that legally? Silence. Then that is fraud, Mom. Depending on how the money was sent, it could be wire fraud, which is federal. Why are you asking me this? Who has been taking money from you? I need to confirm a few things first, I said. Before I tell anyone, I want my facts locked down. Can you send me information about what kind of evidence matters in a fraud case? Mom, you are scaring me. I am fine. I am more fine than I have been in 10 years actually. I just need to be smart about this. Can you help me? I can do better than send you articles. I am driving down this weekend. Nathan, that is 15 hours. I'll fly. I'll be there Friday night. You do not need to, Mom. His voice dropped into that low, firm register that sounded exactly like his father. I am coming. We'll handle this together. After I hung up, I sat back in Walter's old recliner, the brown leather one with the worn armrests, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not pain, relief. For the first time in 10 years, I was not carrying this alone. Nathan landed at O'Hare Friday evening. I picked him up at the curb in my 12-year-old Camry, and the moment he climbed into the passenger seat, I could see the tension pulling at the skin around his eyes. He had not slept. He hugged me across the center console without saying anything for a long time. I had made pot roast, his favorite since he was 9 years old. We barely touched it. Instead, we sat at the dining table and I laid everything out. The receipts in their neat rows. The spiral notebook of printed texts. The bank email from 2014. The calculator still showing 60,000. Nathan went through every piece of it without speaking. When he finished, he looked up at me, and the muscle in his jaw was jumping the same way Walter's used to when he was holding back fury. Phyllis did this. I believe so. But I need to be certain before I say it out loud in any official capacity. I need those original documents she showed me to be confirmed as fabrications. And I need to know if anyone else was involved. Nathan opened his laptop. First thing Monday, we went to the bank. In person, we got certified documentation of everything. Then we find a lawyer who specializes in exactly this. That weekend crawled, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Phyllis over 10 years. The hugs at family barbecues. The birthday cards she never forgot to send. The time she called me on the anniversary of Walter's death just to say she was thinking of me. Had any of it been real, or had every kindness been calculated, a maintenance payment on the lie to keep the money flowing? Monday morning at 9 sharp, Nathan and I walked through the glass doors of Heartland Community Bank. Jennifer Tanaka met us in a small office off the main lobby. She was maybe 40, professional, with reading glasses pushed up on her head. When Nathan explained why we were there, she pulled Walter's full account history onto her screen and turned the monitor so we could both see it. Mr. Calloway had no loans with this institution, she said. Not ever. His credit score at the time of his death was 812. When he passed, there was a checking account with a modest balance and a savings account. Both were transferred to you, Mrs. Calloway, as the named beneficiary. The estate closed without issue. Can you print certified copies of all of that? Nathan asked. Every page. She did, stamping each one with the bank seal. Then she folded her hands on the desk. Mrs. Calloway, I want to be direct. If someone fabricated loan documents and used them to collect money from you, that is criminal fraud. You need to file a police report. We will, Nathan said, today. After the bank, we drove to the office of Diane Callahan, an attorney Nathan had found who specialized in elder financial exploitation. Her practice was in a converted brownstone in downtown Evanston, and her walls were lined with framed articles about cases she had won. She was in her mid-50s, compact, precise, with a handshake that could crack walnuts. She listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Dorothy, what happened to you is textbook elder financial abuse. Under Illinois law, this is both a criminal offense and a civil cause of action. You can press charges, and you can sue for restitution plus damages. Will I actually get the money back? That depends on what assets the defendant holds. But your evidence is exceptionally strong. Receipts, written admissions, and bank certification that the underlying claim was fabricated? Most attorneys would settle before trial. The question is whether you want to pursue criminal charges, civil recovery, or both. I thought about every coupon I had clipped. Every medication I had skipped. Every time Chloe called from college sounding exhausted from her part-time job because I could not help her. Both? I said. I want both. Diane nodded once, like a general receiving an order she had been waiting for. Then here is how we proceed. We document everything with forensic precision. We determined whether Phyllis acted alone or had accomplices. We file a police report, and under no circumstances do you contact Phyllis or let her know what you've discovered. But keeping the secret did not last long. That same evening, Nathan and I were organizing documents at the kitchen table when my phone rang. It was Renee, Nathan's wife, calling from Denver. Dorothy, something strange just happened. Phyllis called me out of the blue. She said she heard you went to the bank today asking about Walter's accounts. She wanted to know if you were feeling all right, if maybe you were getting a little confused about old financial matters. She asked me to have you call her immediately. The blood drained from my face. I could feel it go, like someone had pulled a plug. Nathan saw the color leave my cheeks and put down the document he was holding. What happened? I put the phone on speaker. Renee, what exactly were Phyllis' words? She said grief can play tricks on memory, especially for women our age. She said if you had questions about Walter's estate, she had all the records and could clear things up. She sounded worried, but also, I do not know, aggressive about it. Like she really needed me to make you call her. Do not tell her anything, Nathan said immediately. Mom is fine. We are going through some old paperwork, that is all. After we hung up, the kitchen felt smaller. Nathan looked at me across the table. She has a contact at the bank, I said quietly. Someone tipped her off. Or she has an alert on the account somehow. Either way, she knows we are looking. Good, I said, and the words came out harder than I expected. Let her lose sleep for a change. The next morning brought an escalation I had not anticipated. Diane called at 8:30. Dorothy, I ran a background check on Phyllis Barton. She filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 2 years ago. She is currently being sued by 3 creditors. And here is the part that should concern you. Her bankruptcy filings lists total debts exceeding $140,000. My hands tightened around the phone. She has been in financial trouble this whole time? She has been drowning. Your $500 a month was not going to pay off a phantom bank loan. It was subsidizing her life. But it gets worse. I pulled property records. Phyllis Barton purchased a vacation condominium in Door County, Wisconsin, in 2016. That is 2 years into your payments. I set the phone on the counter because my grip was no longer steady. A vacation condo. She bought a vacation property with money I had sacrificed medications and meals to send her. This was not a desperate woman making a bad decision in a moment of weakness. This was a plan. A calculated, decade-long plan executed against a grieving widow by someone who called herself family. Dorothy, are you still there? I am here, I said. Tell me what to do next. We filed the police report today, before she has time to liquidate assets or fabricate a counter-narrative. Wednesday afternoon, Nathan drove me to the Cook County Police Station. The detective assigned to us was a woman named Morales, maybe 45, with deep-set eyes that had clearly seen the worst of what people did to each other. She took my statement in a small room that smelled like burned coffee and copied machine toner. I laid everything on the metal table. The bank certifications, the Western Union receipts, the printed text messages, Diane's property records. Detective Morales went through it all page by page. Her expression did not change, but her pen moved faster as she got deeper into the stack. Mrs. Calloway, I'll be straight with you, she said. Family fraud cases are notoriously difficult to prosecute. The defendant almost always claims the money was a gift or a voluntary arrangement. But you've done something most victims do not do. You kept meticulous records. That changes everything. What happens now? We open a formal investigation. We subpoena bank records. We bring Miss Barton in for questioning. I should prepare you though. She will almost certainly retain a lawyer and refuse to cooperate initially. I understand, I said. One more thing. Do not engage with her directly. No calls, no texts, no conversations. Anything she says to you could become evidence, but anything you say to her could be used to claim harassment or intimidation. I already spoke with her once since I found out, I admitted. I told her the bank said Walter had no debt. Morales paused. What was her response? She said the bank must be mistaken. Of course she did. Morales closed her notebook. From this point forward, silence. Let us do our job. That evening, I was rinsing dishes at the kitchen sink when my phone rang. Phyllis. I stared at the caller ID. Water dripped from my fingers onto the screen. Nathan was in the living room. He appeared in the doorway immediately. Do not answer that. But I did. I cannot fully explain why. Maybe I needed to hear her voice through the new lens of what I now knew. Maybe I needed to test whether I could detect the machinery of deception that had operated on me for a decade. Dorothy. Phyllis' voice was warm, almost musical. I've been trying to reach you. Renee mentioned you visited the bank. Is everything okay? I just want to make sure you are not worrying about anything unnecessarily. Everything is fine, I said. My voice was leveled, almost pleasant. Just organizing some old documents. Oh, wonderful. You know, at our age, paperwork can get so overwhelming. If you have any questions at all about Walter's arrangements, I have copies of everything. I can bring them over this weekend. Actually, Phyllis, the bank told me something interesting. They said Walter never had any debts. 3 seconds of silence. I counted them by the drip of the kitchen faucet. Well, that is not entirely accurate, Phyllis said. Banks lost records all the time. You know how these big institutions are. They showed me the complete estate settlement from 2014. Every account closed, 0 balance owed, certified copies. The pause lasted longer this time. When Phyllis spoke again, the music was gone from her voice. Something metallic had replaced it. Dorothy, I think there has been a miscommunication. I've been helping you navigate a very complex situation for years. If you are confused about the details, we should sit down together and go through everything. Where did my $60,000 go, Phyllis? Excuse me, $500 a month for 10 years. I have every receipt, I have every text you sent confirming you received the money. Where did it go? Her breathing changed. I could hear it through the phone, faster, shallower. I do not appreciate what you are suggesting. I have given up years of my life managing your affairs. Years, and this is the gratitude I received? I am not suggesting anything, I am asking a direct question. Her voice went cold, completely, unmistakably cold. You need to be very careful, Dorothy. You are a 72-year-old woman living by yourself. You are getting confused, and if you start making wild accusations, people are going to wonder about your mental fitness. They are going to wonder if maybe you need supervised care. Nathan crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, took the phone from my hand and put it on speaker, double quotes Phyllis.it is Nathan. The voice shifted instantly, warming again, concerned. Nathan, thank goodness, your mother is very confused right now. I think she needs her $60,000 back. We have filed a police report. You will be contacted for formal questioning. The warmth evaporated. What came next was a voice I had never heard from Phyllis in 40 years. Low, controlled, and venomous. You are making a catastrophic mistake. Both of you. I have documentation proving your mother was fully aware of every payment. I have witnesses who will testify that these were voluntary contributions to help a family member in need. If you drag this into court, I will countersue for defamation, and I will make sure every relative from here to Wisconsin knows that Dorothy Calloway has lost her mind and is persecuting the one person who stood by her. Nathan hung up. I sat down at the table. My pulse was beating so hard I could feel it in my fingertips against the wood grain. She is going to fight, I said. Of course she is. She is cornered. But Mom, cornered people make mistakes, and we have something she does not have, the truth. Thursday brought the next wave. My daughter Sharon called from Tucson, her voice tight with confusion. Mom, I just got off the phone with Phyllis. She is saying you have accused her of stealing, that you are not thinking clearly, that grief has finally caught up with you after all these years. She is calling everyone. Sharon, I need you to listen to me carefully, I said. Phyllis has been collecting $500 a month from me for 10 years by telling me your father owed money to the bank. The bank has confirmed in writing that no such debt ever existed. I have 120 receipts. I have her text messages acknowledging every payment. This is not confusion, this is fraud. Sharon went quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. That is $60,000, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I am booking a flight. Over the next 48 hours, Phyllis' counter-campaign reached full velocity. My phone rang constantly with calls from relatives I had not spoken to in years, all of them concerned about my cognitive state. Phyllis had been thorough. The narrative she was building was elegant in its cruelty. The devoted cousin who had selflessly managed a confused widow's finances for a decade, now being victimized by baseless accusations driven by senility. Then Friday afternoon, something happened that changed the trajectory of everything. Nathan had flown back to Denver that morning for work. I was alone in the house, kneeling in the garden tying Walter's rose canes to the trellis, when my phone buzzed with the doorbell camera alert. I pulled off my gardening gloves and looked at the screen. Phyllis was standing on my front porch in a navy blue blazer, her posture rigid, her chin lifted. She pressed the bell 3 times in rapid succession. I did not answer. She walked around the side of the house to the backyard gate. Dorothy, your car is in the driveway. I know you are here. We need to talk about this face to face like adults. I set down the twisted TIs and stood up to face her through the chain link fence. My attorney has advised me not to speak with you. Your attorney? She let out a laugh that sounded like it had been rehearsed. Dorothy, listen to yourself. Attorneys, police, this is family business. We are family. We can resolve this without dragging strangers into it. You stole $60,000 from me, Phyllis. I did not steal a single cent. Her voice climbed. I managed your finances. I kept track of everything. I spent hours, making sure your situation was handled, and now you want to criminalize that? You want to humiliate me in front of the entire family because you cannot keep your facts organized? The facts are organized, they are in a filing cabinet in my attorney's office. The bank says Walter owed nothing. You told me he did. You collected money based on that lie. That is fraud. Phyllis's face flushed from her jawline up to her temples. You have no idea what you are starting. If you go through with this, I'll make sure everyone, every single person in this family, knows what kind of woman you really are. I'll tell them how you checked out on Walter in his last years, how you refused to help anyone, how you hoarded money while the rest of us struggled. Get off my property. You are going to regret this, Dorothy. I promise you that. I have friends. I have people who know the truth. You are going to look like a fool. Leave. Now. She turned and walked back through the gate. I heard her car door slam, the engine revved hard, and the tires chirped against the pavement as she pulled away. I stood in the garden with Walter's roses just beginning to open around me, and my hands were shaking so badly, could not have held the pruning shears if I tried. My heart was slamming against my ribs. But beneath the adrenaline, beneath the physical tremors, there was something solid and unmovable. I was right, and she knew it, and that was why she was screaming. I went inside, locked every door, and called Diane Callahan. She came to your house? Diane's voice went sharp as a blade. Dorothy, that is witness intimidation. I need you to write down every word she said, right now, while it is fresh. Do not wait. I did, then I remembered something. Diane, the doorbell camera. It records audio. Save that footage immediately. Back it up to your computer. Email it to me. Do not let it record over. This is exactly the kind of evidence that wins cases. I spent the next hour figuring out how to download the video file and emailing it. Nathan walked me through it over the phone from Denver. When it was done, I made chamomile tea, took 2 aspirin, and sat in Walter's recliner with the leather worn smooth from decades of his weight. My entire body felt like it had been through a car wash made of broken glass. I was 72 years old, and I was fighting a war I never asked for. But I was not retreating, not one step. For the next 3 days, I let myself rest. Nathan called every morning and every evening. Sharon flew in from Tucson on Saturday, and when I showed her the full evidence spread across the dining table, she sat down and pressed both hands over her mouth. She did not speak for a full minute. Then she looked up at me with wet eyes and said, I am so sorry I was not here sooner. Kevin, my youngest, sent flowers from Minneapolis with a card that read, We are all behind you, Mom, every single one of us. But the support that caught me off guard came from next door. Sunday afternoon, I heard a firm knock. Through the doorbell camera, I saw Vivian Kowalski, my neighbor of 16 years. Vivian was 81, widowed even longer than I had been, and sharper than most people half her age. She was holding a glass baking dish covered in foil. I heard the whole thing Friday, she said when I opened the door. My kitchen window was open. That woman standing at your fence screaming at you like you owed her something. She walked past me into the house without waiting for an invitation and set the dishes on the counter. I made beef stew. Sit down. Over the next hour, Vivian told me something I had never known. 5 years earlier, her own nephew had swindled her out of nearly $30,000 through a fabricated home repair scheme. Different methods, same anatomy of betrayal. A family member targeting a grieving widow because grief makes people pliable. I took him to court, Vivian said, pointing her spoon at me for emphasis. It took 18 months. It was miserable. And I got every dollar back. Did your family turn on you? The weak ones did, the ones who would rather pretend nothing happened than face an uncomfortable truth. They disappeared, the ones worth keeping stayed. She set down her spoon. Your Sharon flew in from Arizona. Your boys are calling every day. You are not alone, Dorothy, and you are not wrong. She was right, and hearing it from someone who had walked this exact road made the ground under my feet feel solid again. That evening, Detective Morales called. "Mrs. Calloway, we brought Phyllis Barton in for questioning. She arrived with an attorney and refused to make any statement. But I want to tell you something interesting." Her attorney immediately asked about the possibility of a settlement. My breath caught. What kind of settlement? They offered $10,000 for you to drop the investigation and sign a non-disclosure agreement. 10 out of 60, that is what I said. But here is what matters. She would not be offering anything if she were not guilty. An innocent person does not try to buy silence. I am not accepting that. I was hoping you would say that. Because we just obtained a subpoena for her complete bank records going back 11 years. This case is getting stronger by the hour. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet house and felt something unfamiliar spreading through my chest. It was not relief. It was not even confidence. It was power. For 10 years, I had been the one making sacrifices, the one going without, the one trusting blindly. Now I was the one with the evidence, the lawyer, the detective, and the truth. The balance had shifted, and it was never shifting back. Monday morning, Phyllis' attorney called Diane with a new offer. Diane called me afterwards with a tone that mixed amusement and contempt in equal measures. "They have raised it to $25,000. And they are now claiming that you verbally agreed to help Phyllis with her personal financial difficulties, that the payments were gifts, not debt repayment." That is a lie. Of course it is. But they are constructing a narrative for a potential jury. They are also threatening to countersue for defamation if you continue telling family members about the situation. A stillness settled over me. Not the trembling kind, the steady kind. Let them try. "Dorothy, I want to be honest with you about what comes next. They are going to go after your credibility, your memory, your mental acuity. They may try to subpoena your medical records. They will attempt to depose your children. This is going to be invasive and exhausting before it gets better. Are you ready for that?" I looked out the kitchen window at Walter's roses, blooming in defiant red. I thought about the furnace I could not replace, the tooth I lost, the look on Chloe's face when I told her I could not help with tuition, the trip to Italy that lived as a brochure in Walter's desk drawer for 30 years and never became anything more. "I am ready," I said. That week, something I had not planned for began to unfold. Sharon had mentioned my situation to a friend. Vivian had told her church group. Within days, people I barely recognized were approaching me at the Jewel Osco on Harlem Avenue, sharing their own stories of being exploited by relatives, pressing my hands and saying they were pulling for me. A local elder advocacy organization called asking if I would consider speaking publicly once the case concluded. A reporter from the Chicago Tribune left a voicemail requesting an interview. I declined the interview on Diane's advice, but I began to understand that this was bigger than my $60,000. I was fighting for every widow who had been lied to by someone she trusted, every senior who had been too ashamed to fight back, every person who had confused family loyalty with a license to be exploited. Then Wednesday evening, a new escalation. I was watering the roses when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Think carefully about what you are doing. Consider your grandchildren. Do they need to watch their grandmother humiliated in open court? Take the settlement, walk away." I forwarded it to Nathan immediately. His face appeared on my screen 30 seconds later via video call, his jaw locked tight. "That is witness tampering. Send it to Morales right now." I did. Morales called back within the hour. "Mrs. Calloway, we can trace that number. But I need to ask you directly. Are these intimidation tactics affecting your resolve?" "No, good. Because I just received Phyllis Barton's bank records. Dorothy, the picture they painted is damning. I cannot share details yet, but I can tell you this. Your case is solid." 2 weeks after I filed the police report, the final desperate play arrived at my front door. 3 people stood on the porch, captured in sharp detail by the doorbell camera. Phyllis, looking thinner than I remembered, her polish visibly cracking. Her husband Glenn, a large man who shifted his weight from foot to foot and could not seem to decide what to do with his hands. And Donald, Walter's brother, whom I had not seen since the funeral. Donald stared at his shoes like a child called to the principal's office. They rang the bell. I watched them through the camera for a full 30 seconds before I opened the door. I did not step aside to let them in. What do you want? To talk, Phyllis said. As a family, please, Dorothy, just hear us out. No, Glenn cleared his throat. Mrs. Calloway, this situation has gotten out of control. Police, lawyers, it is destroying relationships that go back decades. Phyllis destroyed those relationships when she stole from me. Nobody stole anything, Phyllis said, and her voice cracked on the last word. All right, fine. I used some of that money for my own expenses. I was in a terrible financial position. I was about to lose everything. I thought you would not notice. You had this house, your pension, your social security. I was drowning, and I thought if I could just stabilize, I would pay it all back. So you decided to take from me instead. I was going to repay every cent. Her eyes were wide, almost wild. But then you went to the bank, you got lawyers, you called the police. You've ruined my entire life over something I was going to fix. There it was, out loud, on my porch. Recorded by the camera 6 inches above the doorframe. Glenn grabbed her elbow. Phyllis, stop talking, right now. But she could not stop. The dam had broken. Do you understand what you have done? They are going to take my condo. They are going to take my car. Everything I've worked for, gone. And for what? You are never going to see that money. It is spent, every dollar. I spent it keeping myself alive while you sat in this house collecting sympathy. Get off my property, I said. My voice was quiet, completely quiet. All of you. Donald took one step forward. Margaret, Robert would not have. Dorothy, I corrected him. My name is Dorothy, and Walter would not have wanted his cousin stealing from his widow. You can leave now. Donald's face went slack. He turned and walked to the car without another word. Glenn pulled Phyllis by the arm. She was still talking, her voice rising into something between a sob and a snarl, but I closed the door and the lock clicked into place and the sound of her was gone. I stood with my back against the door and my palms flat against the woods. My chest was heaving, my pulse was a drumbeat in my ears. Through the front window, I watched the car pull away. Then I walked to the kitchen, sat down, and called Diane Callahan. She confessed again, I said, on my porch, on camera, with audio. Save everything, Diane said. Do not touch that footage. Dorothy, this woman just handed us the case on a plate. The court date arrived 6 weeks later on a cold November morning. This was not the criminal trial. That would come separately if the district attorney moved forward. This was the civil hearing, my lawsuit demanding full restitution. Diane had explained that this was our opportunity to present evidence under oath and force Phyllis to defend her actions in front of a judge. Nathan flew in from Denver. Sharon drove up from Tucson. Kevin took the train from Minneapolis. My 3 children sat in the row directly behind me, shoulder to shoulder. I could feel them there without turning around. Across the aisle, Phyllis sat with her attorney, Randall Pike, a man whose suit looked more expensive than her entire wardrobe. She stared at the table in front of her. She did not look at me once. The judge was a woman named Catherine Aldridge, mid-60s, with steel gray hair and a reputation Diane had described in 2 words. No nonsense. Miss Callahan, you may proceed, Judge Aldridge said. Diane stood. Your Honor, this case is straightforward. Dorothy Calloway, a 72-year-old widow, was told by the defendant that her deceased husband had outstanding bank debts. For 10 years, Mrs. Calloway sent $500 per month to the defendant, totaling $60,000, believing she was preventing foreclosure on her home. No such debts existed. The defendant knew this and accepted every payment. She presented the bank certifications, the estate documents, the Western Union receipts, all 120 of them, the printed text messages, then she played the doorbell camera footage. The courtroom went still. Phyllis's own voice filled the room, tinny through the speaker but perfectly clear. I used some of that money for my own expenses. I thought you would not notice. I was drowning. I watched Phyllis's face as she heard herself. Her lips pressed together until they turned white. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table. Randall Pike stood quickly. Your Honor, my client was under extreme emotional duress during that exchange. Those statements were coerced by a hostile confrontation. Your client showed up uninvited at the plaintiff's home, Judge Aldridge said flatly. Proceed, Miss Callahan. Diane called Detective Morales. Morales testified about the investigation, the subpoenaed bank records, the pattern of deposits matching my transfers. Then Diane called Jennifer Tanaka from the bank, who confirmed under oath that Walter Calloway had never held any outstanding loans, lines of credit, or debts of any kind with Heartland Community Bank. Then Diane called me. I walked to the witness stand. I placed my hand on the Bible. I swore to tell the truth. My children were watching. The judge was watching. Phyllis was watching, though she kept dropping her eyes to the table. Mrs. Calloway, Diane began. Please describe what happened in the weeks following your husband's death. I told it from the beginning. Phyllis at my kitchen table. The papers spread between us. The decade of transfers, the sacrifices, the tooth I lost, the medication I rationed, the tuition I could not contribute to, the trip to Italy that stayed a brochure. I trusted her, I said, and I looked directly at Phyllis as I said it. She was at my wedding. She sat with me in the hospital the night Walter died. She was the last person in the world I would have suspected of lying to me, and she counted on that. Phyllis was crying, not the quiet, dignified kind. The messy kind, with hiccuping breaths and mascara tracking down her cheeks. But these were not tears of remorse. These were the tears of someone watching the walls close in. Randall Pike cross-examined me. He was careful, almost gentle, trying to suggest that perhaps I had misunderstood the arrangement. That perhaps the payments were voluntary assistance to a family member. That perhaps my memory at 72 was not entirely reliable. Mr. Pike, I said, folding my hands in my lap. I am 72 years old. I am not senile. I managed a school office for 20 years. I balanced budgets and maintained student records for 600 children. I know the difference between helping families and being deceived. Phyllis told me my husband owed money to a bank. The bank says he did not. Those are not feelings. Those are facts. Then it was Phyllis's turn. She took the stand slowly, as if each step cost her something. Under Randall Pike's gentle questioning, she attempted to reframe the story. She had been in financial distress. She had intended to help me while also helping herself. She had never meant to deceive anyone. It had just gotten out of hand. Diane stood for cross-examination. Miss Barton, did you tell Dorothy Calloway that her husband had outstanding bank debts? I told her there were financial obligations that needed. Yes or no, did you tell her that her husband owed money to Heartland Community Bank? I may have used those words, but did you show her documents suggesting that those debts were real? They were not exactly yes or no. Yes. Were those documents genuine? Phyllis's mouth opened and closed. Her lawyer shifted in his chair. They were based on were they issued by Heartland Community Bank? No, did you create them yourself? I was trying to explain a complicated situation in terms she would understand. You fabricated documents to convince a grieving widow that she owed money she did not owe, is that correct? That is not how I would characterize. And you then collected $500 per month from her for 10 years based on those fabricated documents, is that correct? Phyllis's composure collapsed. She looked at her lawyer, he looked at the table. Yes, she whispered. Diane presented the final piece of evidence. Phyllis's bank records, obtained by subpoena. They showed monthly deposits of exactly $500 stretching back a decade. They also showed purchases at Nordstrom, at Williams-Sonoma, airline tickets to Cancun, and a $41,000 down payment on a vacation condominium in Door County, Wisconsin. The evidence speaks for itself, Diane said. Phyllis Barton systematically defrauded an elderly widow of $60,000 through fabricated documents and sustained deception. She spent the stolen money on luxuries while her victim rationed medication and lost teeth. We request full restitution, punitive damages, and legal fees. Judge Aldridge removed her glasses. She looked at Phyllis for a long time. Miss Barton, I have presided over financial abuse cases for 20 years. This is among the most deliberate and sustained I have encountered. You exploited a family member's grief, her trust in you, and her isolation. You fabricated evidence. You maintained a lie for an entire decade. You watched this woman sacrifice her health and her dignity to pay you money she did not owe, and you texted her words of encouragement while you did it. Randall Pike began to rise. Judge Aldridge held up one hand without looking at him. I am ordering full restitution in the amount of $60,000. I am ordering punitive damages of $30,000. I am ordering the defendant to pay all of Mrs. Calloway's legal fees, and I am referring this matter to the Cook County District Attorney for criminal prosecution. Phyllis slumped in her chair like someone had removed her spine. Behind me, Nathan's hand landed on my shoulder. Sharon was crying quietly. Kevin reached forward and squeezed my arm. It was over. I had won. The courtroom emptied slowly. Phyllis and Glenn left through a side door, avoiding every pair of eyes in the room. I watched them go and felt no surge of triumph, no vindication, just the clean, settled feeling of a scale that had finally been balanced. In the hallway, Diane pulled me aside. Dorothy, this was decisive, but I want to prepare you for reality. Collecting may take time. Phyllis filed bankruptcy 2 years ago. She may not have $90,000 available. She has a condo in Door County, I said, and a car she bought with my money. Sell them. Diane allowed herself a thin smile. That is exactly what will happen. Court-ordered asset seizure. Wage garnishment, whatever it takes. You'll get your money back, Dorothy. That evening, Detective Morales called. The district attorney reviewed everything. They are filing criminal charges. Wire fraud, elder financial abuse, and theft by deception. Phyllis Barton will be arraigned next month. What is she facing? If convicted, 4 to 8 years. Given the duration and the amount, the DA is not inclined towards leniency. I thought about that for a moment. Phyllis in a cell, her children growing up with their mother in prison, Glenn alone. Then I thought about the tooth I lost because $11 mattered. The medication I skipped because $500 had to go to Phyllis on the 1st of every month. Chloe working double shifts in a college dining hall because her grandmother could not send a check. Good, I said. Over the following months, I watched Phyllis's constructed life dismantle itself with the same patient inevitability she had used to drain mines. The Door County condo was seized and auctioned. It sold for $38,000, every cent directed to my restitution. Her SUV, a luxury model she had purchased in 2019, was repossessed and sold for another $9,000. Her wages from a real estate office were garnished at the maximum rate allowed under Illinois law. Glenn filed for divorce. I heard about it through Sharon, who stayed connected to parts of the extended family. He claimed he had known nothing about the fraud. He wanted to protect his assets and his children from the fallout. Before the criminal trial began, Phyllis's own daughter posted a long message on social media about the experience of discovering your parents is a criminal, about the shame that follows you into every room. People in our community shared it hundreds of times. The criminal trial came in February, 3 months after the civil judgment. Phyllis pleaded guilty. The evidence was too overwhelming for any other strategy. My receipts, her texts, the bank records, her own recorded confessions on 2 separate occasions. She was sentenced to 4 years with the possibility of parole after 2.5. I attended the sentencing hearings. Phyllis stood in an orange jumpsuit that made her skin look gray. When the judge asked if she wished to make a statement, she turned towards me. I am sorry, Dorothy, she said. Her voice was flat, emptied out. I was desperate. I made choices I cannot take back. I am sorry. I said nothing in return. Apologies do not give back 10 years. By spring, I had received $71,000 between the asset sales, wage garnishment, and the ongoing restitution schedule. Diane's fees had been covered by the judgment. The remaining balance would trickle in over the coming years from Phyllis's garnished earnings, even from prison work programs. But something happened with that money that I had not expected. Once it was sitting in my account, I realized I did not need it the way I once had. My children were established. My grandchildren were finding their footing. The house was paid off, my pension and social security covered my needs. So I made choices that felt right. I donated $15,000 to the Cook County Elder Advocacy Coalition, the organization that had reached out during my case. They used it to establish a legal assistance fund for senior victims of financial fraud. I gave Chloe $12,000 towards her student loans. She sat at my kitchen table and stared at the check and could not speak. I took Nathan, Sharon, and Kevin and their families on a trip to Italy. We walked through the Amalfi Coast Gardens that Walter had bookmarked in a travel brochure that still sat in his desk drawer. We scattered a small portion of his ashes among the lemon trees overlooking the sea. The trip cost $18,000, and it was worth every cent he never got to spend. The rest went into a savings account for genuine emergencies and small, earned pleasures. A new winter coat, fresh flowers every week, the good coffee, not the store brand. The Chicago Tribune ran my story in April. Other outlets followed. I gave a few careful interviews, hoping someone out there might recognize the warning signs in their own life before it was too late. Letters arrived from across the country. Other widows, other victims. Some shared their own stories. Some asked for guidance. I answered every single one by hand, in ink, on stationery Walter had given me years ago, and I had been saving for something important enough. The Elder Advocacy Coalition asked me to speak at their annual fundraiser. I stood at a podium in front of 200 people and told my story from beginning to end. The most difficult part was not the legal process, I told them. It was accepting that someone I had loved and trusted for decades had deliberately chosen to hurt me. But once I accepted that, everything else became clear. Keep records of everything. Trust what the evidence tells you, even when your heart wants to argue. And never let shame or fear convince you that staying silent is easier than seeking justice. The room stood. They clapped for a long time. Phyllis' appeals were denied. Her parole hearing is scheduled, and the conditions include continued restitution payments for years after release. I heard through the extended family grapevine that Glenn remarried. That her children still did not speak to her. That she works a prison job earning cents on the dollar, and a portion of even that goes toward what she owes me. I ran into her once, months after her early release. I was at a discount grocery store near the old neighborhood buying flowers for Walter's grave the way I do every month. She was in aisle 7, restocking canned goods in a store vest. Our eyes met across the shelving unit. She looked older than her years. Worn thin. For a moment, I thought she might walk towards me, might try to say something, but she just turned back to the cans. I bought my flowers and drove to the cemetery and arranged them the way Walter liked, with the red roses in the center. I felt nothing about seeing her. She was a stranger who had once been family. Now she was just a person facing the consequences of her own choices. Donald, Walter's brother, called me a year after the verdict. He wanted to apologize. I should have believed you immediately, he said. I chose loyalty to a name over loyalty to the truth. Phyllis has been calling me asking for money, and I finally saw what you saw from the beginning. She does not change, she just finds new people to take from. I accepted his apology because holding grudges takes energy I would rather spend on my garden. But I did not need it, my life had already moved forward. The family members who believed Phyllis's lies about my confusion either eventually apologized or quietly disappeared from my life. The ones who stood by me stayed close. I learned something valuable about the word family. It does not automatically mean the people who share your blood. It means the people who stand next to you when the truth is uncomfortable and refuse to look away. I fixed the roof. No more bucket in the spare bedroom when it rained. I renovated Walter's rose garden, adding 3 new varieties he had circled in a nursery catalog years ago. Every morning, I drink my coffee out there surrounded by blooms and birdsongs, sitting in a wrought iron chair Nathan welded for me as a birthday gift. My relationship with my children deepened into something richer than it had ever been. Nathan visits every month now, sometimes bringing the grandkids. Sharon and I enrolled in a cooking class together in the city. Kevin and I have a standing weekly video call where he teaches me something new on the computer and I tell him stories about his father that he has never heard. Chloe graduated. She sent me a framed photo of herself in caps and gowns with a handwritten note taped to the back. This diploma exists because you fought for it, Grandma. Thank you. I put it on the mantle next to Walter's photograph. I rejoined the book club I had quit 10 years ago to save money. The women there treated me differently now, not with pity but with a kind of respect I had not expected. You did something most of us would be too frightened to do, one of them said. You chose the truth over comfort. The Elder Advocacy Coalition made me a volunteer counselor. Once a month, I sit across the table from another senior who has been lied to, stolen from, manipulated by someone they trusted. I help them organize their evidence. I connected them with attorneys. I looked them in the eyes and said the words no one said to me for 10 years. You are not confused, you are not senile. Someone did this to you, and you have every right to fight back. I traveled, not far, not fast. My knees remind me every morning that I am 74. But I saw the Grand Canyon with Sharon. I visited Nathan in Denver and watched his children play in the snow. I spent Christmas in Minneapolis with Kevin's family. I went places and did things I had denied myself for a decade because $500 a month had to go to a lie. I even started having coffee once a week with a widower named Jean from the senior center. Nothing serious. He makes me laugh and does not try to handle my finances, which at this point qualifies as my top romantic requirement. We talk about our late spouses without sadness, just the warm ache of fond memories. A year after the verdict, a letter arrived from a woman in Virginia who had read my story in a syndicated article. Her brother-in-law had been collecting money from her under a nearly identical scheme for 7 years. My case gave her the courage to investigate, and she had uncovered the same pattern. Fabricated debts, steady payments, false reassurances. Because of you, I fought back, she wrote, and I won. I framed that letter and hung it next to Walter's photo and Chloe's diploma. That wall is my real legacy now. Not the woman who was defrauded. The women who fought back and then helped others do the same. I planted a new rosebush in the garden last spring. The tag at the nursery called the variety Brave Heart. It blooms deep red against the trellis Walter built with his own hands, and every morning when I see it, I remember that justice is not about revenge. Justice is about standing in front of the people who hurt you and saying, clearly and without apology, what you did was wrong, and there will be consequences. There were consequences, complete ones, without compromise. I am 74 now, my money is my own. My home is my own, my mornings belong to coffee and roses and birdsong, and nobody is ever going to take that from me again. So let me ask you this, if someone you loved and trusted betrayed you like that, would you fight back? Or would you stay quiet? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and if this story meant something to you, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next one. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next story.